Your life is the price tag. Turns out, losing your life comes at a cost. You don't just get to ignore yourself, your needs, your body's messages and signals for free. It comes at a cost. And the price tag was much heftier than I would have ever thought. Turns out, our bodies were not designed to be ignored. And if you are unwilling or unable to look at what it's trying to unearth in you, it will get your attention by consuming you in its suffering. My body tried to tell me for years that I was wildly misunderstood, predominantly by myself, but also by the people around me, because I had taught them how I wanted to be interpreted. Kind, helpful, interesting, fun, wise, put together, easy to be with, always ready to get in your trenches. When internally I was exhausted by the reality of keeping up appearances, overwhelmed by the way I'd structured my relationships to largely be giving without hardly allowing any receiving, constantly assessing the needs of others without recognition of my own needs, and living in a growing sense of panic and depletion over the continual disintegration of self, as opposed to what I perceived was going to become peace and happiness. I was stuck in the good girl box, and I had no clue. I thought that if I was too difficult to be with, I would lose relationship. I ended up losing relationship with myself because I also refused to spend time with me. Watching TV at every hour of the night instead of sitting with myself. Constantly cleaning, organizing, fixing, planning instead of assessing what I was feeling. Looking around me to others for social cues about whether things were okay or not, and focusing on helping them be okay so that I could finally rest. Turns out that never happened. What did happen was a catastrophic explosion of self and my closest relationships. But before that ever happened, my body became a war zone of mixed messages and endless turmoil. Every hour of many days was spent spiraling about the way I felt, not understanding why I might have felt that way. I remember I had spent years with an increasing angst about this anxiety I was feeling. It felt more and more out of control. It grew to the point that my spouse and I had given her a name. Carla became a member of the family. She was checked on to see what she was feeling a vast majority of the days, which in hindsight sounds ludicrous to me now. What's Carla like today? How's Carla feeling about this activity? What's Carla need? So much of my time was spent negotiating with her, running from her, screaming internally at her, never once asking myself why Carla ever existed or what she might have been trying to tell me. Turns out, the hardest work was looking internally past the anxiety, the panic, the not okayness. It took me hiring the kindest life coach to help me to ask the right questions and stop negotiating with the emotional terrorist with ever-increasing demands of my mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual self. I had to pay someone to tell me over and over again that I was worth listening to. I had to pay someone to ask me what I wanted, to help me identify what I needed, to help me understand that Carla might have something to say that might actually be worth listening to. It took a really long time to learn that at the core of this war was a little girl inside that never quite learned that she deserved to feel safe with the people around her without having to give up her needs or boundaries in the process. That she didn't need to wait along the fringes of life until others were comfortable for her to curl up on the carpet and rest while taking up the smallest amount of room possible. It took me a really long time to understand that when I get big and messy and say the internal things externally, Carla doesn't need to exist. She was merely the representation of my body that refused to let my spirit die. She waged her war in me until I let her out in all of her ugly glory. I thought she was going to consume me and that I was going to be hospitalized, lost forever to this mental prison I had found myself in. When all she wanted from me was for me to speak my truth, to say what I needed to say, to set my boundaries regardless of how the person would feel, to understand my worth simply because I have breath in my lungs and I am wonderful. She wanted more for me than I had the ability to want for myself. And so 2 years ago, I finally came to the place of gratitude for her existence, to thank her for saving my life by not letting my spirit die. She knew I could do it. She never gave up, even though the darkness had all but overcome me. She knew I could do it. She never gave up, even though the darkness had all but consumed me. To the outside world, I was light and love. To the outside world, I was productive and in control. Carla knew better. To her, it was a matter of life and death. Because of her work, she no longer needs to exist. My journey with her was spent moving from a place of annoyance and compromise to panic and deep fear to acceptance and neutrality, and finally to gratitude. Anxiety now exists simply as welcome flags in my life, a place to get curious and open myself up to a conversation about why it's happening. What do I need myself and possibly others to know? I now honor Carla's memory by getting grumpy, letting myself make others uncomfortable, being too much, and not smoothing it over for the benefit of someone else. I now do lots of things to let myself exist in the rooms I walk into, instead of the belief that I can or should survive on fumes. For some of you, this may seem like a woman who has allowed herself to become bitter or brash and selfish. But to those of you and those of us who have lived with their version of Carla or are living with her now, you know that the good girl box needs to be destroyed at all costs. Your life is too precious to let it exist. Stop waging that war, girl. You are not the enemy.